Değerli çocuk dostları, Çocuk İstismarı ve İhmalini Önleme Derneği sizleri uzmanlarla buluşturmaya devam ediyor. Bildiğiniz gibi uzunca zamandır çevrimiçi konferanslarda çocukların korunmasını konuşuyoruz. Çocuk ihmali ve istismarının önlenmesini konuşuyoruz. Çok farklı disiplinlerden, mesleklerden, çok farklı alanlardan uzmanlarla bugüne kadar bir araya geldik. Bugün yine farklı bir ülkeden, İngiltere'den bir konuğumuz var. Jenny Gray. Kendisiyle derneğimizin önceki başkanlarından Profesör Doktor ŞAHİN yönetiminde bir arada olacağız. Şimdi ben sözü değerli hocalarıma bırakıyorum. Öncelikle hoş geldiniz diyorum bütün Zoom oturumunda bulunan hocalarımıza ve YouTube başında olan sizlere. Figen Hocam selamlar. Size de
merhabalar. Çok teşekkür ederim Kasım Hocam. Bu akşam benim için bir onur. Çok değerli bir konuğun moderatörlüğünü yapıyor olmak. Kısaca kim olduğundan ben söz edeyim. Jenny Gray, sosyal hizmet danışmanı, İngiltere'de yaşıyor ve 20 yıldan uzun süre devlet kademelerinde bu sosyal hizmet alanında çalışmış biri. Ve hatta kraliçenin özel ödülünü bu konuda almış. Çok takdir gören bir sosyal hizmet uzmanı. Emekli olduktan sonra şu anda bağımsız olarak çalışıyor. Bu Child and Family Training denen bir kuruluşları var. Hope for Children diye kaynak kitapları da var bu eğitimin. Onun direktörü. Aynı zamanda işte mahkeme raporlarını yapıyor, eğitimler yapıyor. Yani aslında emekli ama pek bizler gibi o da emekliliğini yaşamadan gene aktif şekilde çalışmaya devam ediyor. Bir diğer tanışıklığımız Jenny ile benim Uluslararası Çocuk İstismarı İhmalini Önleme Derneği İSKEN'in benim yönetimde olduğum dönemdeki dönem başkanlarından biriydi. Çok değerli katkıları oldu o cemiyete de. Şu anda yönetimde değiliz ama geçmiş dönem başkanlarından biri. Bir diğer anonsum da aslında 3-7 Ekim'de Çocuk İstismarı İhmalini Önleme Derneği ve çok metin ortaklaşa düzenledikleri Çocuk Koruma Kongresi, 4. Uluslararası Çocuk Koruma Kongresi İzmir'de yapılırken Jenny ve eşi Steven gene bizlerle orada olacaklar ve bu daha önce de bu eğitimlerini yaptıkları Child and Family Training'in Hope for Children şeylerinin, guide'larının, rehberlerinin eğitimlerini yapacaklar. Bununla ilgili de 3 Ekim'de kurslarımız olacak. Onu da şimdiden buradan duyurmuş olayım ki ilgilenenler Kasım Hoca'ya veya bana da başvurmuş olurlar. Ben sözü çok uzatmadan Jenny'ye vereceğim. Jenny'nin sunumuyla ilgili şunu söyleyeceğim. Şimdi İngilizce ve Türkçe slaytları arka arkaya, kendisi için İngilizce, bizler için Türkçesi var. Maalesef konuşması sırasında çevirimiz olmayacak. Daha sonra YouTube'dan dinlerken, YouTube'un biliyorsunuz öyle bir özelliği var. Altyazı çıkarılabiliyor. Tercüme edilmiş altyazı, Türkçe altyazıyla da dinleme şansı olacak. Bu akşam soruları olanlar gene de Türkçe olarak iletirlerse Kasım Hoca bana iletecek. Ben tercüme edip Jenny'ye sunacağım. Yani bu akşam da gene soru cevap kısmını da yapabileceğiz. Şimdi ben sözü Jenny'ye vermek istiyorum. Jenny, sorry for a long introduction. I had to talk a little long about you because you did so wonderful things all through your career. And I also mentioned about our conference in October, that international congress, and that you are going to make a course about these guidelines too. And now I'll leave it to you to begin your presentation. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Merhaba to everybody. That'll be the limit probably of my Turkish, apart from I can say things like tamam, which seems to come up a lot in conversation, and York is very popular, but I will stick to English. I'm very pleased to be invited by TISPACAN colleagues to give a brief overview of the Hope for Children and Families program. I know that some of you will have attended the trainings that we have done in the past in Turkey. Most recently, we were in Ankara just really prior to COVID, and it's a pleasure that we can kind of start again, as it were. We have a new beginning when we are able to present at workshops and talk with colleagues in Izmir later this year. We're really looking forward to it, and looking forward to renewing contacts with colleagues that we've worked with in the past. Today, I'm going to talk about the resources that Dr. Arnon Bentovim, one of our directors, has led in terms of developing resources that come under the umbrella of the Hope for Children and Families program. And the main purpose of these resources is really to skill up practitioners from all disciplines who are working with children and families, and children in particular who may have suffered harm or have some difficulties in their lives, perhaps problems with depression or anxiety. And the purpose of these resources, which are evidence-based, is to provide resources that can be trained and utilised relatively easily by those working in a range of services across the board: health, education, in social services, as well as in youth justice services. So anybody who's working with children and families can use the resources for their work. Now, how do I move this on? So I will really give in this presentation a brief overview of the resources themselves and how they are intended to be used. And then at the end, there will be time for questions. So just for people's information, we have 9 intervention guides that make up the intervention resources. And these sit on the back end, if you like, in terms of assessment, analysis and planning, and these move into the area of interventions. We have engagement and goal setting, which is where we start always with working with children and families. Some of our resources, for example, the promoting positive parenting and helping in terms of children's promoting their children's health, development and well-being, are very much at the front end of work we might do in terms of more preventative work that we would do with children and families. And then we have others where there has been abuse or neglect identified, guidance on modifying abusive and neglectful parenting, or working where children have been sexually abused or may have sexually abused others. We have a guide that really draws together all our work with families as a whole group. And then there are 2 specific guides that are much more focused on working with children and young people. One is about addressing emotional and traumatic responses, and that's something that we've done a lot of training on really during COVID and post-COVID, because of the impact that it had on so many of children's lives in many different ways. And also for children and young people who are experiencing disruptive behaviours. And that guide has been very important particularly for people working in areas perhaps in residential care or in a school setting, as well as more generally. And I just should say that TISPCAN colleagues have very kindly translated quite a number of these already into Turkish, and we hope that this will be launched through TISPCAN and available through TISPCAN from the Izmir conference onwards, so that we can make them available to those who wish to use them in Turkey, and really recognising the huge amount of work that our TISPCAN colleagues have done in the past, and I know will continue to do, to get these materials both ready for publication, but also then in terms of facilitating with us their dissemination and particularly their use. So this program was designed really as an innovative approach to, sorry, I'm working in English, I must work in Turkish, to be able to help organizations bring about whole system change in any kind of children's services, I've said, through adopting evidence-based programs. We know that a lot of staff may not have had the ability, as it were, through lack of opportunity, to be able to learn a number of different evidence-based interventions. Usually we focus on one or two in our training. A lot of people will have had cognitive behavioral therapy, for example. Things like family therapy may not be as common for people to have finished a whole training. So these resources are looking at taking the best from all the different evidence-based interventions and thinking about how to make them available so that they can be utilised by the majority of the workforce. The whole purpose of them is to enhance the quality of people's direct work, and the idea is that people can use them to enhance what they already do. So it's not a kind of add-on, it's about utilising them in your day-to-day work. We have a number of resources, as I said, that address assessment, analysis, planning and intervention and reviewing progress. And these all knit together into an entire package. And they're relevant for all types of situations and all types of presenting issues that children and young people may present to services with, and also obviously involve working with their families. And this includes working with children who have disabilities. We've used them extensively with children, for example, who are in foster care or in institutional care. We've also utilised them here in the UK, where children have come as refugees to the UK. So we've tested them really in a lot of different situations and found that they are able to be utilised really irrespective of the presenting problems, and also irrespective of the type of service provision within an agency setting. The whole issue about utilising them is to be able to customise the resources in order to be able to present a customised service based on the assessment of an individual child and family's needs, or a group, for example, of parents who may benefit from positive parenting training. The approach itself is based on work that was done by Bruce Chapita and colleagues in the United States, where they developed...
From English.
Sorry, thank you, I need that prompt. Is that they were utilising what's called common practice elements that they distilled out from the child mental health protocols, and we've built on that approach really to take it into child abuse and neglect as well, but also encompassing a number of modules and resources that they've used in terms of child mental health. So we've distilled out those common practice elements that cut across specialist protocols, clinical procedures and processes. So our colleagues, Dr. Bentivim and Ian Elliott, found that there were 43 common elements distilled from 26 gold standard research projects, really looking at both the prevention of child abuse and neglect and the prevention of the recurrence of abuse or neglect where it had been identified, and really looking to how we can ensure that children's health and development is promoted actively, even for those children who've been abused or neglected. I've got Turkish, right? And the other aspect of it was looking at what the common factors are in all the different trainings. And I'm sure you'll be aware of the importance of the interpersonal elements that you might bring to your work in terms of your ability to engage with people, to bring warmth to your relationships. They're very much a part of the therapeutic process, as well as being able to develop alliances with families and work alongside them. And the whole way in which the intervention resources have been developed is with an emphasis of working collaboratively with children, young people and families, and being able to utilize your own skills and ability to work with people so that they feel that they are being supported, and also that you're valuing their strengths and thinking about how to bring out the best in a family situation. Oftentimes we focus on the kind of problems, and then we lose sight of the strengths that the family may be also able to and will always have, that they can bring to the therapeutic table. Right, now getting better at this. We take at the heart of what we do the assessment triangle, which really looks at children in the context of their developmental progress, the ability of parents to facilitate their health and development, and to do this within the context of what is helpful or unhelpful within the wider family and the environment, the community within which families are living. So I've talked before about the fact that there are specific interventions that are focused on abuse, thinking about psychosocial education on the impact of abuse, creating a narrative of stressful traumatic events, thinking about how people can manage their stressful thoughts, and particularly thinking about managing harmful, angry or sexualized behavior. It's often quite a big theme for those who are abusive or neglectful to their children, that they are unable to manage their own thoughts and behaviors. We've also have some skills which look at sort of generic interventions around facilitating communication and also ensuring that children and in fact adults are safe within a relationship, helping both children and adults develop techniques in relation to relaxation, problem solving, relationship building, and skill building, the kind of key elements of any good quality relationship. Thinking about how we can ensure that, and thinking of working with children, how we can ensure that they are able to reward themselves for something that's done well and praise themselves, as well as obviously for others, external family members or teachers praising children for things that have done well. Being able to be self-motivated to bring about change, and to be assertive in a positive way to help yourself in difficult situations. Sometimes you may need to really be able to be assertive in terms of, for example, protecting yourself, but also in talking to others about your difficulties. Then we have professional family interventions. We do work and think, even if we're dealing with the child in a particular series of sessions, we want to think about that child within the context of their family, using techniques from motivational interviewing, family therapy, marital therapy, and being aware of the importance of active case management. That means actually actively taking things forward, setting goals and working to achieve those goals, and monitoring whether they're met, rather than passively sort of just monitoring what's happening. Also look at specific areas around parenting interventions and psychoeducation, particularly thinking and helping parents and those who are abusing children and young people think about the impact of abuse, exposure to violence, being aware of the difficulties that are presented in terms of particularly where adults, parents have mental health difficulties, being very aware of the impact of neglect on children's development. That's often under-recognised, and given that in most countries where we do keep statistics, about half of the children come to notice because of neglect, or neglect may be a feature where other children have suffered other forms of abuse. So very important people understand this neglect is not benign. It has a major impact on children, their development, and thinking about situations where we may need to give individual therapy, and that may be by referring to another agency or doing some direct work with the caregiver alongside as part of your plan of what you're doing in relation to the child and family. And then I think, and I know this is something that Figan and Tolga are very, very strong on, thinking about how to promote positive parenting behaviour, absolutely critical in abuse situations as well as in prevention and general family life, to help parents know how to exhibit positive parenting and how to feel rewarded by that behaviour. We're wanting to look at how to promote secure attachments between children with their parents, and also obviously being clear about the importance of children being safe and being able to deal with issues such as feeding problems or difficulties with children's behaviour, and use of techniques such as rewards, praise, commands and timeout techniques to help children be able to monitor and manage their own behaviours and bring about change. So, as I've said, we work to the assessment framework.
I'll move along, another one.
Oh, thank you, sorry. I'll have to think Turkish. So we use this framework, which, as I've said, looks at the different key elements of child development, parenting capacity, and family and environmental factors. We look through assessments, how we might gather information in relation to these areas, and then how we use that information, we analyse it, make a plan, and then think about what kinds of interventions are going to be most appropriate. Do it. Fine. So we do have a 7-stage model, which I'll go through very quickly.
Next slide.
Thank you. That's your main role. Thinking about how we can consider the referral and aims of the assessment, then gathering information so that we're able to collect what is known and think about where the gaps are in relation to each of the dimensions within the assessment framework itself. Then establishing what the nature of impairment and the level of impairment might be to a child's health and development. So organising the information using the assessment framework to provide structure. We're then going to move into analysis and how we can analyse the patterns of harm and protection. And in this, we need to be thinking about our chronologies. They're always important, and particularly in complex child abuse cases, and generating hypotheses about which processes, patterns of influence may be affecting a child's health and development. So through that process of analysis, we can move into the next stage of child protection decision-making and planning. We do have a whole process for undertaking analysis in this complex area. And it's important to both analyse our information and then to use that information to, once it's been analysed, once we understand what's happening in the child and family's life, to be able to then decide what we're going to do and to make a plan. I won't go into that. And do you want to speak to that, Stephen? The systemic analysis.
Yes, we're going to talk more about this next week. But the starting point is the central one, the child's current health and development. And then we think about what might have triggered whatever the event is. what might be predisposing, in other words, something from parents' background and history. And then we look at the protective factors and processes that are influencing the child's current health and development, and what are the harmful maintaining factors and processes that are influencing the child's current health and development. The arrows indicate processes, something influencing something else. It could be trauma from the past, from parents' past, bringing an influence in the present. And that leads in the central middle one, not the central, the bottom middle one, predicting what the future of the child's health and development will be if all this remains the same. And that can lead us to think about interventions.
Okay. But you're going to speak about that in more detail next week, aren't you?
You bet.
We then need to develop our plan of intervention. And I think we're very conscious of developing a plan that means change will need to happen sufficiently within a child's time frame. For example, if you're working with a young baby who's being harmed, then you really need to see change quite quickly. Otherwise, you might need to think of the child being placed in an alternative care environment. With older children, there's a little bit more time for change, but you have to be very mindful that we need to be thinking about whether we are getting change or not. We're also very conscious of the importance of developing the sequence or order of interventions to meet the child and family's needs, and not asking them to do too many things at the same time. That the plan needs to be coherent, but also fit with the family's daily life, needing to go to work, children going to nursery or school, for example, and making sure that what you're asking of the family is doable. Critically, we need to be clear about, what evidence we're going to use to know that the child's health and development has been improved as a result of the interventions. And then we would want to undertake the intervention in accordance with the plan that we have developed. We also emphasize in the last stage about being able to identify if in fact you are seeing the change that is desired in terms of improvements to the child's health and development, and really looking at how you're going to measure that and what's going to be telling you, and importantly, what will tell the family, the child and parents, family members, that there is change or not as a result of your interventions. I think sometimes people don't have hope for change, and so it's really important that you're able to monitor change over time and really to celebrate small, important achievements on the way to your bigger goals. So just to remind you again that these are the different areas in which we have developed the intervention guides. They do fit together as a comprehensive package in terms of the types of interventions that you might want to do, working individually with a child, individually with parents as a group, with family altogether, and thinking about what will be necessary in terms of bringing about the desired change. So they are organized, each guide follows the same format and is organized in a way that has been found to be helpful when you're teaching according to the guide. They're all divided up into modules which relate to a particular theme of the guide. And what is critical is that once you start a module, you need to finish it step by step, because the steps that are set out within each module are the ones that have been found to bring about change from an evidence base. There are practitioner briefings which have been designed really to summarize theory and research, to point people to the sort of much more the source documents, but just to really bring together in a way that hopefully is accessible and easy to digest what some of the theory and research is. There are quite a lot of materials that we can use to undertake direct work with children and families. They can complete them within a therapeutic session, or they can take them home and complete them for their homework and bring them back and then discuss how they're getting on. And I think that we like to think about the use of the guides in terms of not only doing training and following each guide through module by module, but also really stress the importance of follow-up training and coaching in practice to embed the learning from the training into people's everyday practice. And I'm sure you know this from other trainings, that it's not much help to people in terms of their professional development if they go on a course and then promptly forget what they learned and don't put it into practice the minute they leave the door of the training room. So really trying to think about how we can help embed the learning into practice through coaching and follow-up. And just as a final word on that, we did pilot the materials in 5 sites and really thought about then how to present the materials in a way that really made them digestible, because we had 2 big volumes to start with, which were fairly difficult for people to get to grips with, which we then condensed down into these 9 guides according to the particular titles organized by theme. We do have a lot of different handouts that can be given to provide information for children and families, so they can be provided during a therapeutic program at appropriate points in time. There are notes for practitioners that will offer you supplementary information and guidance to support the direct work. Now, for those who are very experienced, they might know this already. Particularly for those who aren't, it's really quite a help to just think about, what it is I need to be doing or thinking about and supporting my work. And again, there are suggested scripts, and these are very helpful for people who feel unfamiliar with the area. I think one of the areas we all struggle with is working with child sexual abuse. It's a very difficult area. So, for example, there may be scripts to help you with talking with young people who may have abused other young people, or talking with parents who may suspect that their young person is abusing others or has actually done so. So it's a way of people perhaps practicing, and then obviously when in working with families, taking the text, the essence of the text, as it were, within the scripts and owning it and making it appropriate for who they're working with. There are lots of different activities for children and parents, and I know practitioners bring their own activities, so these are just some suggestions that can be added to people's toolkits. During the process of training, we like to use a lot of practice and role play and coaching to really help, again, embed the training into the work, and that also reflects what you might be doing with the children and families as part of your session. You might be helping them role play a particular situation and thinking about how they might respond. And if they're having problems in an area, thinking, well, what might you do differently, and practicing that. We have records that we can use for recording what's done with children and families and following through the process from referral through to closure. And also, I think worksheets, but like homework that sort of help children and families consolidate their learning between sessions. One of the key one of the key sort of areas that's important for those who are wanting to use the materials is to become familiar with their content, because when you understand the content, you can then be very flexible in terms of developing a particular plan of intervention that fits with the needs of your particular child and family. And this is where the Hope for Children and Families approach, the modular approach, differs from a manualized one. So the modules can be selected as appropriate rather than having to follow slavishly through a whole guide with a particular child or family and feel you've got to complete that. It's making sure you understand the content of the guides and then are able to utilize them appropriately with each child and family. And as I said before, once each module's been selected, then it's important to follow that through step by step. So from a practitioner's point of view, when they come to develop their plan of intervention, you will have already identified the risks of harm or difficulties, and importantly, the protective factors and strengths. And then, as I've said, to choose which guides and modules are helpful, what are going to be your priorities. Oftentimes it's best to start with something that's really pressing for a child or a parent. And if you're able to succeed in that area, it will give them hope and perhaps enable them to work on more difficult issues next time round. We work in terms of, as I said, with collaboration of setting goals in conjunction with the child and family and thinking about what they think would be a good outcome. But we're always mindful, particularly in child protection context, that outcome has to be a safe one for the child, and we're always focusing on the child's welfare and well-being in order to maximize their developmental progress. So as well as thinking about obviously what modules will need to be used in what order, we also need to be constantly thinking about how to review our plan. Is what we're doing working, or do we need to do something different? So very much it's the same as what you would do in your everyday practice. Whoops, sorry. Did I go back? This is just some initial feedback we got from the pilots. People did feel strongly they were evidence-based, and that was both the materials were both motivating and confidence building. And I think building people's confidence, often reinforcing that they do know more than they think, is important, as well as perhaps new knowledge. People felt that it brought meaning to their work and led to better, more effective outcomes. It was an interesting finding that staff enjoyed using them and valued the framework. And I think if people are happy and feel positive about what they're doing through work, and that it enhances what they're going to be doing with the children and families, it was important that we had feedback that the tools themselves did give children and young people a stronger voice, and they also gave us positive feedback about using the materials. And for staff, it generated confidence in their own skills. And as I've said, sometimes it's a matter of really reinforcing and helping people feel that what they do is correct and helpful, rather than necessarily anything new or something they haven't already been trained on before. They may have forgotten about it. They may have forgotten that they learned it once, and therefore they can have those memories revived and begin to bring about change. We have got, and I've name checked here, an evaluation of an evidence-based training and coaching program that was undertaken with newly qualified social workers here in the UK. I've included in the PowerPoints what we did, really as a way of for people, Turkish, as a way of helping you if you wish to look in more detail at this particular program, which we evaluated to essentially to see whether it made a difference in terms of the newly qualified social workers' skills, knowledge and confidence, and whether it was the training that they did was integrated into their practice, which is always the key issue. So our findings were very encouraging. and really found that practitioners had improved their skills, knowledge, and confidence. And these changes were statistically significant, which from a social work point of view is really good, because so often we can't demonstrate that in our area. I know it's different through medicine or psychology, but social work, it's often difficult to get that level of confidence. And the findings were really consistent with what we found from other child and family training programs that we've developed, not only in the delivered not only in the UK but also abroad. And there were just some comments that I've added in really that were kind of positive from the trainees, who all found it to be a very helpful experience for them. And particularly, I think you found it very helpful to utilize the tools that were in the resources and be helped to think about how to utilize them. And again, this theme of really reinforcing and building on people's knowledge and helping them think about how to put that into practice was very important. And I'll leave you to look at that paper in more detail if you wish to. It's in English, but not Turkish. But I think we wanted now to perhaps have some time for discussion about really how you think it might be, the modular approach to practice might be utilized yourselves in your Turkish context, and in particular through TISPACAN, how that might be taken forward. So I think, again, perhaps I'd be grateful for your help in terms of the moderating and taking forward the discussion.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jenny, for this comprehensive presentation and introducing these great resources that we have the privilege of having, using, and translating into Turkish. Sevgili izleyenlerden Kasım Hocam belki şeyleri görebiliyor olacak. Bu konuda cevapları olanlar varsa cevapları için. Evet. Tolga'cığım buyurun. Tolga has a question.
Türkçe konuşacağım. Öyle bir metot uyguluyoruz herkes anlasın diye.
Tamam. Bence niye?
Evet. Yani çok teşekkür ediyorum. Yani çok net ve çok altyapısı kuvvetli ve üzerinde çalışıp değerlendirilmiş bir program. İnsan çok tabii burada heyecanlanıyor. Birkaç sorum vardı. Onların zaten son slaytlarda cevabını aldı. Bir tanesi uygulayıcıların geri bildirimleriyle ilgili. Ve değişik ülkelerde yapılan bu programın uygulayıcılardan aynı geri bildirimlerin alması çok önemli. Benim sorum, bu sistem oturulduktan sonra uygulayıcıların uygulamalar esnasında yaşadıkları deneyimlerini ve kazandıkları yeni kazanımlarını meslekte onu geliştirecek bir sistem, bir ekleme veya tekrardan yenileme, geliştirme gibi bir durum nasıl yapılıyor?
Yani ilk eğitimi aldıktan sonra tekrar bir revizyon ve gerekiyor mu?
Evet, yani onu geliştirmek için neler yapılıyor? Tabii değerlendirmeler çok önemli. Bu birinci soru bu. Değerlendirmeler
ben bir bunu sorayım unutmadan şuraya kadar. Jenny, Tolga started thanking you about this presentation and about these modules and these resources that have a very strong background and very evidence-based use of it. He had several questions, but he said in your last slides he already got the answers of it, and he thinks it's very important, the feedback of the facilitators or what you call them, practitioners from different countries, that they all have similar feedbacks about the use of these guides, and they're all positive. What he wants to know is, after the initial training, do these practitioners need any other extra training after a while, any addition, any refreshment or something? So how do you manage the already trained practitioners for the next steps?
That's a very good point. We haven't done a lot of refresher courses, as we would call them, as part of our work. There's a bit of a shortage of funding available for running follow-ups, but we have done that, particularly in Mexico, where we've had the opportunity to go back with staff and do follow-ups and reinforce the learning. I think one of the things that we really would stress is the importance of ongoing coaching and supervision to help with the implementation so that it does become part of practice. And really that it's important to try and embed the new ways of working or new ways of thinking into the organizational context. The other issue is that sometimes, in terms of training, we may do sort of an initial block of 3 or 4 topics and not cover, for example, the complex area of child sexual abuse. So then people might come back and say, well, we want to move on to do this training next. They all use the same modular approach, but the topic area is different. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that people may choose to do much more specialist trainings, which is sort of if they've not been trained in CBT, for example, or they may wish to do more in relation to family therapy. So that's a more formalized training that you would need to do over a number of years. So I think, the key thing really is about trying to embed the training into people's everyday practice and into the organization in which they're working, and try and help people think about how to utilize the resources in their practice.
But in general, for now, you don't provide any ongoing coaching or next level course. But you said in Mexico you did something else. Was it included in Mexico?
Well, in Mexico, we did the follow-up coaching, but what we've tended to do is add other guides in, if that makes sense. So we've done 3 or 4 core guides and help people get to grips with those, and then they might want training in other specific areas. And we did the same when we were training more recently in Moldova, for example, where we did coaching sessions after, between the trainings to try and help embed those into the practice.
Let me translate what you already said. Şu Tolgacı'nın sorusuna hani tekrar üstüne başka şeyler konulacak eğitimler yapıyor musunuz sorusuna. Yani genel olarak bu refresher kurs denen işte hatırlatıcı ya da tekrar tazeleyici kurslar fon sıkıntısı nedeniyle hani çok yapamadığımız bir şey dedi. Aslında olması gereken o eğitim verdiğimiz organizasyonun çerçevesi içine aynı zamanda devam eden koçluk ve onların o günlük pratiğine bu işleri uygulamaları sırasında da destek olmayı koymak iyi olurdu ama bunu pek yapamıyoruz bu nedenle yani çok takip ve sonrasındaki koçluk kısmını yapamıyoruz dedi. Meksika'da ve Moldova'da 1-2 tane farklı örnekleri olmuş. Onlar da arkadan bir süre koçluk yapabilme şansları olmuş. Bir de bazen bu modüller tabii ayrı ayrı 9 tane ayrı modül var. Bazı gruplar daha basic olan, temel olan 3 tanesini alıyor. Aslında onun işine yarayacak olanlar o. Daha sonra ikinci başka bir eğitimde de işte mesela çocuk cinsel istismarı gibi daha özellikli bir eğitim gerektiren başka bir şeyi daha sonraki basamakta alabiliyorlar. Öyle bir basamaklandırma da olabiliyor dedi. Örneğin bu cognitive behavioral terapi konusunda bilişsel davranışçı terapi konusunda çok şey yoksa işte onunla ilgili olan bir başka modülü alabiliyor. Farklı farklı modülleri seçip kendi işine yarayanları alma şeklinde de bir uygulama olabiliyor dedi.
Benim 1-2 sorum daha vardı ama Stephen parmak kaldırmış zannediyorum bu soruyla ilgilidir. İsterseniz Stephen'a söz verin sonra başka söz alacak yoksa tekrar söz almak isterim.
Okay, Tolga says he has some other questions, but we first want to hear from you, Stephen. Probably you have something to say about this question or something else. I don't know. So,
thank you.
it is yours.
Yes, I think we try and encourage organizations to encourage their staff to have discussions about how they're using the materials. So in a way, they can almost coach one another, because we don't want it to be that people feel they constantly have to be retrained. I think that it's people learn through using the materials, and then they can discuss with their colleagues in their context in which they're working what's worked best.
Let me translate. Diyor aslında biz hani böyle çok uzun süreli sürekli koçluk yapmak da değil amacımız. Çünkü biz şunu istiyoruz. Yani bir kuruluşun içinde insanlar bu eğitimi aldıktan sonra kullanırken birbirlerine de koçluk yapabilirler. İşte ben şunu denedim, bu iyi işledi, bu olmadı falan gibi birbirlerine de destek olabilirler. Bu daha iyi işler bir sistem olur diye düşünüyoruz diyor. Yes. Anything else you want to say?
Higher.
Higher. Okay, thank you. Yes, Jenny?
I just wanted to add that when we do the training, each person who's being trained is provided with a hard copy of the guide that they're being trained on. And that provides them with a resource that they can continue to go back to as well. So we encourage people to it's not just a training, right, we've done that, we shut the book. We encourage people to go back and reread the book and think about it, in terms of planning their interventions, that when they have a particular case, they go back and think about what modules are within the guide and think about what they might do for that particular child and family, so that we encourage, I guess, much more active learning post training to embed the knowledge and skills into practice. But also part of it is encouraging people to keep using the guides as resources. They're not just a one-off experience. They're something that you continue to utilize and perhaps go back to as refreshers yourself in a self-directed learning way. But you can also do that through team supervision or team discussions. And we have provided follow-up in terms of discussions with those who are managing and supervising the staff. So doing it not directly with practitioners themselves, but providing support to those who are supervising or managing them when they come across a particular issue or difficulty, and advising about how to resolve this or how to manage this particular situation.
Thank you. Bir şey daha eklemek istiyorum dedi Jenny. Biz bu eğitimi yaptığımız zaman eğitimi alan kişilere bu kaynakların basılı kopyalarını zaten bırakıyoruz. Ve aslında hani o refresher kurs gibi görev yapan şey de o kaynakların olması. Yani yeni bir vakayla karşılaştıklarında geri dönüp bakıp işte bu guide'lardan hangisi işime yarar diye bakıp oradan tekrar alıp kullanabiliyorlar ve yani bir şekilde aktif öğrenmeyi aslında kendi kendine öğrenmeyi teşvik eden bir tarzı var bunun dedi. Bir de uygulayıcılara direkt koçluk vermekten ziyade o uygulayıcıların kendi organizasyondaki üstleri, amirleri, süpervizörleri aracılığıyla bazen hani zor bir vakayla karşılaşıldığında onlara destek vererek onların koçluk vermesini de sağlıyoruz dedi. One of the questions is about Congress course that we are planning. Jenny, they would like to have more information about that. Let me provide some information about that, if that's okay for you.
I think we've got, I think it depends on what's been agreed by the program. The organizers of the congress program. But I think what we've agreed is that we will do a day course. I think you and I will do that, Figen,
Yes.
focusing specifically on the guide Modifying Abuse for Neglectful Parenting as one of the
Yes.
guides.
Yes.
And
Also Stevens, yes.
Yeah. Stephen, do you want to talk about what you're planning to do with Suzanne and others?
Yes, we plan to run a one-day course on analysis and decision making using the Safeguarding Children Assessment and Analysis Framework. And we want to show all the training materials that are available already translated into Turkish, the videos that can be used for training that are already subtitled in Turkish. So there's a substantial array of material that's already translated into Turkish, and we want to look at whether you will have ideas about how you could make use of it and what would work in the Turkish context.
Thank you. Şimdi kongrede şu ana kadar bilimsel kurulla yapılan planlamada 3 Ekim günü, yani kongrenin başlamasından önceki gün hem Jenny Gray'in hem Steven'ın birer kursu olacak. Jenny ile ben bu guide'lardan biri olan ihmalkar ve istismar edici ebeveynliği dönüştürmek, değiştirmek rehberi var bir tane. Onun eğitimini yapacağız. Tam gün sabah 9, akşam üstü 4'e kadar sürecek. Türkçe'ye çevrildi o rehber. O kaynağı kullanacağız. Gelen katılımcılar ona sahip olacaklar. Birlikte aktif bir kurs bu zaten. Daha çok workshop gibi birlikte çalışılıyor. Bazı şeyler birlikte tartışılıyor. Diğer tarafta da Steven'la Sezen Zeytinoğlu birlikte yapacaklar. Safeguarding Children diye daha önce de bizim derneğimiz aracılığıyla bunun eğitimleri verilmişti. Buradaki yönetimdeki halen arkadaşlarımızdan da alanlar var. Analiz edip, yani bir sosyal hizmet bakış açısıyla bir çocuğun koruma altına alınmasıyla ilgili işte analiz, değerlendirme çerçevesinden bakıp nasıl bir müdahale gerekeceğine dair bir kurs o da. O da aynı şekilde sabah 9-16 arası olacak. Bunlara kayıtlar kısıtlı sayıda olacak çalışmanın özelliği nedeniyle. We have told maximum of 30 people for each, right? So, yani 30 kişiyle sınırlı olacak katılım her iki kursu içinde. Kayıtlarda pek yakında açılacak. Web sitesinden kayıt olunabilir. Çocuk Koruma Kongresi web sitemiz neydi Tolga? 4. Uluslararası Çocuk Koruma Kongresi diye Google'dan ararsanız web sitesi çıkıyor.
4. Uluslararası Çocuk Koruma Kongresi 2023.
Ama web sitesi Çocuk Koruma Kongresi 2023.com.
Yani şeyden çıkınca zaten hemen çıkıyor.
Tamam, bu şekilde Google'dan tarayınca da çıkıyor.
Ben bir soru daha sorma hakkım.
Tamam. Kasım Hocam, başka soru var mı bu arada gelen?
Başka soru yok hocam henüz gelen.
Yok, o zaman Tolga Hoca'ya veriyorum. No other questions from the audience, so Tolga has one more question.
Aslında Jenny şeye cevap vermişti. Biz bu adli görüşme odaları eğitimleri verirken, İngilizcesi Judicial Interview Rooms'dur. Orada sistemin devam edebilmesi için bir süpervizyon programı ve kendi içlerinde nasıl geliştirecekler, nasıl değerlendirecekler, onları da kurmuştuk. Bilmiyorum şu anda nasıl. Dolayısıyla katılıyorum. Yani kendi içlerindeki süpervizyonlarla olması lazım. Ama bu son soruya cevap veremedi. Kasım Hoca da burada. Birçok hocalarımız da var. Türkiye'de nasıl yapılabilir? Türkiye'de yapılabilmesi için zaten yapılması gereken, yani bu çok böyle değerli bir program. Çok denenmiş. Sonuçlar alınmış. Birçok ülkede geçerliliği anlaşılmış görünüyor. Dolayısıyla biz kendimizi adapte ederken herhalde kurumlarla beraber çalışmamız gerekecek. Yani sosyal hizmet uzmanların çalıştığı kurumlarda, hatta onlara göre yani hangi işleri yapıyorsa o modül belki daha ağırlaştırılabilir. Benim aklıma o geliyor. Yani hem şu anda yetişmeye başlasınlar. Zaten dernek Tipsken zaten bunun arkasında öncü olabilir. Bir de işte kurumlara, özellikle devlet kurumlarında, sosyal hizmet uzmanlarının çalıştığı yerlerde, belki de en gençlerden de başlayarak bu eğitimleri verip ondan sonra değerlendirmesini yapmaya çalışmaktır diye düşünüyorum. Fikirler tabii sizden gelecek, sosyal hizmet. Kasım Hoca'dan başlayarak.
Evet. Let me translate for Jenny and Steven. Tolga says supervision of peers, the method of that kind of supervision sounds very logical to me too, because we have discussed it in the project of judicial interview rooms with Jenny and Steven. I agree with them, he said. And afterwards, your last question, how can we apply this approach to Turkey? Can we do this modular approach? We haven't replied that. Tolga thinks, of course, it's very important if we can apply this in Turkey too, and we need to have contact with governmental, especially governmental parts where social workers work in those parts, and everywhere, wherever there's a social worker functioning there, it's very important. And starting from the less experienced, maybe junior social workers, if we train them with these modules, that might be a good training for them for all through the life. And we would like to ask Kasım, and because he is a very senior social worker and he is an academician of social work, he might have his opinion. And later I would like to ask maybe Nahide. Nahide, belki sana da söz verebiliriz. Tolga Hoca, Kasım Bey'den tabii ki öncelikle bu işin hocası ve akademisyeni, sosyal hizmet nasıl yaklaşım olabilir? Sen de bu eğitimi almış ve uygulayan biri olarak belki görüşlerini paylaşabilirsin diye. O da benim sana sorum.
Yok, ben bütün
Önce
sosyal...
Kasım Hoca'ya veriyorum sözü. Evet.
Tabii, bütün sosyal hizmet uzmanlarından yanıt bekledim ben.
Ben hani eğitimi aldığını bildiğim arkadaşım burada olduğu için hemen ona söz vereyim istedim. Evet, Kasım Hocam.
Ben öncelikle şunu söyleyebilirim ki meslektaşlarımız açısından bu son derece yararlı programın Türkiye'de yaygınlaştırılması, Tolga Hocam'a katılıyorum, son derece yararlı olur. Ama kendisinin de ifade ettiği gibi hükümet kanadından veya yerel yönetimlerden ciddi bir partner bulmamız lazım. Yeni bir bakan atandı, Aile ve Sosyal Hizmetler Bakanlığı'na. Adalet Bakanlığı olabilir, Sağlık Bakanlığı olabilir veya belediyelerle olabilir. Bu partneri bulabilir ve onlarla yola çıkabilirsek iyi olur. Yoksa yani dernek tabii ki bunu yapmaya çok istekliyiz ama dernek ne kadar yeterli olur ondan emin değilim doğrusu.
Mm-hmm. So Kasım thinks, yes, that will be very useful if we can implement these throughout Turkey. It shouldn't be limited to the TISCAN activities. If we can partner with governmental institutions and also maybe municipalities, that will create a larger target population. So it will have a larger effect size if we can use these opportunities, he says. And Nahide. Nahide ilk aldığımız net.
Teşekkür ederim. Evet. Ben hani bu programı daha önce almış ve eğitimini almış biri olarak Sadece hani bu programın sosyal hizmet uzmanları için değil, aslında çocuk korumaya yönelik bir ekip çalışmasını desteklediği ve ekip içerisinde çocuğu multidisipliner olarak değerlendirmesini de destekleyen bir program olduğunu düşünüyorum. Çünkü işte ben çocuk psikiyatri kliniğinde çalışıyorum. Çocuk psikiyatristleriyle, pediatristlerle, adli tıpçılarla daha çok kanıta dayalı olarak çocuğun değerlendirilmesi ve sonucunda da herkesin ortaklaşacağı bir çözüm yolunda buluşabilmesi için güzel bir program olduğunu düşünüyorum. Çünkü uygulama içerisinde aslında sadece sosyal hizmet uzmanlarının değil, çocuğun tedavisiyle ilgili, eğitimiyle ilgili farklı meslek gruplarının da buna katılabileceğini düşünüyorum. O yüzden aslında kanıta dayalı olması açısından da ekipleri de geliştirici ve kendi alanlarında destekleyici bir modül diye düşünüyorum. Modüllerin hepsi için bunu söyleyebilirim kullanan biri olarak. Öğrencilerimle de üniversitedeki öğrencilerime de bu bakış açısını kazandırmaya çalışıyorum. Çünkü ne kadar çok perspektiften çocuk korumayı değerlendirirseniz ve çocuk için hangisinin daha iyi olacağı yönünde ne kadar çok multidisipliner bir yaklaşımla ele alırsanız sonuçları o kadar güzel oluyor. Ekleyebileceklerim bunlar.
Teşekkür ederiz. So Naide says, as I'm one of the people who had this training and I'm still using these guides, I can say it's not only limited to social workers, but also any kind of professions who work in the area of child protection. And it encourages, all these guides actually encourage multidisciplinary work as a team. So it shouldn't be only taught for social workers, but also all child protection workers in the area, she says. She also uses them to train her students in university, and she says it's also very useful for them when they get this type of approach, learning from this module. So she thinks it's evidence-based, useful, beneficial, and not only for social workers, but all child protection officers.
Bu arada sunumu kaldırabilirsek birbirimizi daha iyi göreceğiz.
Can you just close the presentation so that we can see each other better, Jenny?
Oh, sure. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Take the share screen off, Jenny.
Okay, thank you.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Orhan has a question. Yes.
Jane ile Steven'ı görmek ve sizleri görmek hakikaten çok mutluluk verici bir şey. Ben şimdi dinledikten sonra hep şunu düşünüyorum. Bizim bu çocuk istismarı olayında hakikaten sosyal hizmetlerin inanılmaz bir fonksiyonu var. Biz son dönemde hakikaten bizim hastanede olsun, özellikle bu Adalet Bakanlığı'nın mağdur hakları ile ilgili son dönemde çalışıyoruz AGO odaları için. Ben şiddetli bir şekilde kongredeki bu kursa, özellikle Jenny ve Steven'ın kursuna katılmaları için hemen telefon edeceğim Adalet Bakanlığı'na, kendi adli pedagogları ve sosyal hizmetli uzmanları için. Çünkü sistematik düşünme, evidence-based ve hakikaten kanıta dayalı bu şekilde yaklaşım, belli bir algoritma halinde bir şekilde ekip oluşturabilme bence çok önemli. Ben hem bunu ifade etmek istedim hem de hastanedekileri de söyleyeceğim Figen. Bizim mesela 3 tane çok iyi sosyal hizmet uzmanımız var. En azından biri mesela bu kongreye katılabilir. Bu kongrede bu eğitimi alabilir. Çünkü bizim hala ÇİÖ devam ediyor. Yani Çocuk İstismarı, İhmalini, Değerlendirme, Araştırma ve Tedavi Komisyonu. En azından Jenny ve Steven'da karşı karşıya kalıp bu modüllere aşinalık göstermeleri hem hastanedeki koruma merkezleri için hem de Adalet Bakanlığı'nın AGO birimleri için o kadar önemli ki, çok önemli. Çünkü bizler bir şekilde bu bilgileri tedarik edebiliyoruz ama maalesef o arkadaşlar ancak bizim bu şekilde aktardığımız veya yarattığımız ortamlarla ediniyorlar. Hele bu işin en iyi uzmanları onlarla karşı karşıya olduğunda ben çok faydalanacaklarını düşünüyorum. hem Jenny'i hem de Steven'ı ve sizleri görmekten de çok büyük mutluluk duyduğumu ifade etmek istiyorum. Kasım Hocam'ın bu programı efsane zaten. Biz her hafta katılıyoruz bu programlara. Çok güzel oluyor. Kasım'cığım yine canı yürekten tebrik ederim. Kapatıyorum ben hem görüntümü hem sesimi. Çok sevgiler, çok selamlar.
Orhan, first of all, says he is very happy to see you both, Jenny and Steven, and it's a pleasure to listen to you, he says. And he mentions about this judicial interview rooms, that he is now involved in this project, and he says the people working in that room in government of justice, they should come to the course and learn this systematic approach. And also in Hacettepe University, where he works, there is a multidisciplinary team for child protection, to deal with child abuse and neglect. There they have 3 social workers, he says, at least one of them, and maybe even more. He will announce about this course, and he thinks that it's important for people to learn these things, especially from experts like you too.
Thank you. Teşekkürler.
And you raised your hand. You have something to say?
The only thing I wanted to say again was I wasn't quite sure. You kindly, Kasim kindly had a very short document translated into Turkish, setting out a little bit more about the content of the guides. I wasn't quite sure if we circulated that in the chat or how that can get attached to the YouTube.
Şu diğer hani ikinci tercüme edilen bir şey vardı Kasım Hocam. Onu chatten veya başka insanlara nasıl yollayabiliriz soruyor YouTube'da izleyenler için. Onu da olmazsa ekran paylaşımı yapalım. YouTube'da o görüntü.
Yaparım. Sonuna koyarım.
Okay, Kasım will end at the end of this presentation. It's the screen share of that document, so the people who watch the YouTube video will be able to see it at the very end.
Teşekkürler.
Başka soru yoksa yavaş yavaş kapatalım. Okay. Jenny, thank you so much. I don't think we have other questions. Kasım confirms that there are no more questions. And thank you for this very clear and nice presentation. And I'm sure many people are now looking forward to attending the course and learn more about it from you. Çok teşekkürler bütün izleyenlere. Sanıyorum herkesin çok ilgisini çeken, belki bundan sonra da YouTube kanalıyla da izleyecek olanlar için kursa katılıp daha fazla ayrıntısını izlemek isteyeceklerim de çok olacağını tahmin ediyorum. Şimdiden eyvah ne yapacağız, 30 kişiyle nasıl sınırlayacağız diye dertlenmeye başladım ben. Teşekkür ediyorum Kasım Hocam. Sözü size vereyim ve kapanış size yapın.
Ben de çok teşekkür ediyorum. Bu konferansların asıl amacı bilgiye ihtiyacı olanların her zaman erişebilecekleri bir yerde bu bilginin hazır bulunmasını sağlamak. Biz tabii sadece aracıyız. Değerli konuklarımıza